Hello and welcome to Darts Now. I am here with Matt. Matt, first of all, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well. Very excited for it all to get going now. We're officially less than a week away now, aren't we? So this is when I start to count down the days, count down the hours.
We are. Well, we're talking about the big one, of course, Alexandra Palace, the World Championship, the biggest tournament of the year. It literally can make or break careers. But before we get into that, I do want to mention a huge giveaway that we're doing. And it is a big one. If you head over to our Twitter, you'll see all the details at dartsnow_. See our pin tweet. If you follow us, like and retweet it, and drop in the replies who you think will win the World Championship. We are giving away 16 prizes for each day of the World Championship. If you look at our channel, there's a breakdown of each prize that we're doing. There's dartboards, there's lighting systems, there's so many sets of darts, Phil Taylor sets of darts, and there's also a framed, signed photograph of Raymond van Barneveld, by Raymond van Barneveld and Phil Taylor from that 2007 final. And it includes a match used dart from the both of them. So do make sure that you do check that out. And also, if we are going to be previewing the World Championship today, but if you wanted to look at a more in-depth betting preview, we do have our affiliate channel, which is Odds Now. We're going to drop the link in the description. Matt's on it there talking with Adam. If you look at our other channel, Races Now, just breaking everything down and looking at the best markets for you to put your 50p where you want to put it. But onto the darts now. And for the first time in, how long, we have a new outright favourite for the World Championship, Luke Converse. I mean, what do you make of that, Matt? Do you think that's justified? I mean, obviously, he's had a great end to the year. You know, he's won 3 out of 4 majors. Only James Wade beat him in Dortmund. And to be fair, it only seems to be James Wade that stops him from averaging a ton. His performances have been unbelievable as well.
Yeah, he's having a bit of a tough time against James Wade, hasn't he? But he's managed to get through. It's difficult to argue with it because his form is just so good, isn't it? I mean, he looks, even when he doesn't play well, he's finding a way now, which is so important when we talk about winning titles. And that's the difference between going deep and with, learning to win with your B game, your C game, and learning to hang in there. And that's what I've been most impressed with Luke with is the way that he hangs in games now. Even when his opponent starts like coming back at him or having a purple patch, doesn't phase him. He just gets on with it, And Luke is someone I would associate like in previous years with head shaking, negative body language, self-critical, very self-critical. I know he's talked about it himself. He's not doing that now. And that is it's a mentality shift. And we've seen with Michael Smith, we've seen with Peter, right? Once you win one, the floodgates generally open, and they've opened for him. I do have slight reservations about whether he should be like a standalone favourite for this, because winning a world championship is the pinnacle, isn't it? And not many men have done it. I know we recently had all the champions gathered together, and that should just serve as a reminder to everyone how hard it is to actually win a world title. It's a very elite group of players.
Luke Taylor changed a lot of people's lives.
He did. I mean, yeah, it's not to say that he can't win it, and he definitely deserves to be in the top 3 or 4. No one is going to be surprised if he's lifting that trophy aloft at the start of January. But equally, he's gonna go into places that he's never been before. If he's going to win this title, he's going to have to, deal with going into a semi-final against Michael van Gerwen as arguably, if the odds are correct as of now, he's going to be a narrow favourite for that game. I mean, that's uncharted territory. I mean, I personally think what will happen, without going too much down a betting line, is as the tournament goes, people will latch on to Michael a little bit more just because of who he is and the way he plays and the way he progresses through these tournaments. He obviously he's a master of getting through into the latter stages, isn't he? So I think that, the odds will shift as the tournament goes. But Luke has got as good a chance as anybody, I think, a better chance in terms of form, but he does have to still prove himself in a World Championship semi-final, in a World Championship final. It's still uncharted territory. He would not be the first person who looks faultless until it gets to the very, very end of the tournament, and then the nerves, start to maybe kick in a bit. But I think he's capable. I just don't know if he should be favourite over Michael. And I'm sure Gerwyn Price would have something to say about it as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you spoke about that perfectly. I think a a lot of people forget sort of last year Michael van Gerwen because he lost that world final, but he played well in that world final. Smith just did better, and until the final, Michael van Gerwen was not challenged, was he? I mean, I don't think anybody even threatened him. He beat Dimitri van den Berg in the semi-final 6-0. And generally, that's what Michael van Gerwen does at the World Championship. It takes either COVID or a big performance to knock out Michael van Gerwen. I mean, you think of that World Championship quarterfinal, I think it was, against Dave Chisnall. I mean, Chisnall was missing nothing. He very narrowly missed a 9-darter. I've never felt more convinced, by the way, that a 9-darter was going to go in than that one. Maybe apart from Phil Taylor's one that didn't go in his last ever game. I still think about that, Phil Taylor's at so many 9-darters, never at the World Championship. Written in the stars, wasn't it? But it weren't meant to be.
It very, very nearly was. I totally agree with you, and I've said it time and time again. To get rid of Van Gerwen at Alexandra Palace, you generally need a career-defining performance. I think everyone remembers that Chisnall performance as, and I don't say that lightly because Dave Chisnall's had an unbelievable career. But that is the performance that I think of when I think of Chizzy at his best, to demolish Van Gerwen like that. Everyone remembers when Barney knocked Van Gerwen out a few years ago. And that was, Raymond van Barneveld, multiple champion in the world of darts. People still remember that performance as one of his best, don't they, when he beat MVG? So we're looking at someone here to turn up and probably put in the performance, arguably, of their career to get rid of him here. Or he's going to be making at least the semi-final or the final. So that is what Luke will have to deal with probably in the semi-final, unless somebody's done him a massive favour beforehand. So I think as darts fans, the thought of a Luke Humphries MVG best of 13 sets is just like that. It's what you live for, isn't it? I mean, yes. we would kill to see that. Fingers crossed we do get to see it, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion. As I'm sure when we look at the draw, we'll talk about the potential dangers.
Yes, I mean, one more that stands out there is, when was the last time Peter Wright kicked off at a World Championship at 20-1? I mean, I don't know what to make of Peter because it's weird because he won the Euro Tour this year. And he won the European Championship, but they were sort of ports in the storm because didn't really kick on after the European Tour win. He's not really kicked on after the European Championship win. I mean, his Grand Slam was very disappointing. Went out at the group stages. Missed out on the Players Championship finals as well. I'm just wondering whether that lack of match practice would hinder him. 4 weeks without match practice for the World Championship. 20-1. Is that fair or is that justified? I mean, is it fair or is it a bit of a long shot? Do you reckon?
Yeah, it's a very hard player to judge at the best times, isn't he? Even when he's playing well, that there's a really stinking performance around the corner for Peter Wright. He does have these off nights where he looks like you wonder how he's achieved what he's achieved. But I think the one thing I'd say about Peter Wright compared to all the other players listed is he is the one man capable of, having had absolutely no form, suddenly finding his best level, because the way he throws the dart, even, it's very deliberate, isn't it? And,
yes.
he's not, I wouldn't particularly call Wright a rhythm player or a pace player. I think he really aims his dart and he really, he changes the equipment so frequently that it can just suddenly click for him. The reason I actually have a funny feeling that Peter Wright may go well here this year with the lack of attention. I think the break maybe is what he needed. He's had a tough year off the hockey with personal problems and health and whatnot. So, I don't think a break will actually do him any harm. I do have faith that he can, as I say, produce his best out of nowhere almost. The slight worry I have about him is I think his first game is likely to be against Jim Williams. It's a really tough opening game, that. I mean, if he's not on it, Williams is more than capable.
We'll flash that up now. I mean, these are the draw brackets there, and you're absolutely right. We've seen what Jim Williams can do. He's no mug. My only concern about Jim Williams, and I don't think he's ever addressed it, is he loses so many darts on the floor because they just sit in the board so lightly. That makes a difference because in a close game, and if Jim Williams is going to win this game, it is going to be a close game. Even 20 points, the difference between 1-2-1 and 1-4-1, for example. I mean, how much of a difference does that make in the entire match? It's absolutely huge. And I think for him to progress, it's something that, we've seen it before, actually, haven't we? Where players get a lot of bounce outs and they change the throw to sort of fix that issue.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
a
mean,
very unique throw that Jim's got as well,
yeah,
isn't it? You know,
he sort of
the
holds
way
the point, doesn't he? And
he
just sort
does,
of,
and he places them in. I think he's in terms of natural talent, he's right up there. And you know, the fact that he's got you know, business commitments away from darts, and that he probably doesn't play anywhere near as much as he should or could. You just wonder how much better he could be than what he already is. But I mean, that you wouldn't be surprised if Peter Wright, you know, turned up and done a job on him. But I just think if there is any ring rust there, that is a tough old first game, isn't it, for him?
yeah. And speaking of first games, I mean, just looking at that first quarter, of course, the world champion, world number one, Michael Smith is in there. And now he faces either Kevin Durst or Stowe Bunce. Now, obviously, as is tradition, he will play on the opening night. So whoever he faces, he will be facing someone who's playing their second match. I don't know what you think. I think Stowe Bunce comes through that match against Kevin Durst. I just think playing on the Grand Slam stage. I mean, obviously he played well in the Grand Slam, but you know that was the perfect tournament for him. It's 5 matches on the big stage before he comes to Ali Pali. We've seen the quality that he's got. I don't think he's going to be phased. I think because he's a darts fan as well, it almost helps because he's someone who's good. He'll stay over here and enjoy the darts as a fan as well. So I think it just takes a lot of pressure off himself. He's not, you know, he's not playing for his tour card. He's not going to go Q school, so he's not got that pressure on him. It is what it is, and I think if he's going to play a top guy, one of the top seeds early on, you want it to be Michael Smith. He's not played great this year. Michael Smith will say himself that the reason for that is because he's enjoyed his World Championship winning year, took his foot off the gas. Fair play to him, he deserves it. He's adamant that it's not the new darts. He's changed them in July. I'm not so sure. They fly differently. They sit in the ball differently. They look completely different. And he's just not settled with him. And I do think it makes a difference. I mean, he's had some early exits this year, but some of the performances. I mean, he lost to Richard Vaintra in the first match of the World Players' Championship finals with an 85 average. I mean, we've not lost a defending champion on the opening night since John Part in 2009, but I think Smith's in real danger here.
Yeah, I couldn't argue with the words you said there. I do agree. I think Stowe Bunce will come past Kevin Durst. I'm a big fan of both players, but I think I do have a feeling that Kevin Durst is more of a floor player. I know he had a good run at the UK Open, but I do worry about him in the big pressure moments. Whereas Bunce, I think, you know, from what we saw of him, he exceeded everyone's expectation at the Grand Slam, and he's definitely there to enjoy it, isn't he? He doesn't seem to carry the pressure. And he doesn't beat himself up too much when it's not going well. Really good traits to have on the big stage, I think, you know, because you're probably not going to bring your practice form to the Ali Pali stage. So you need to accept that and get on with it and just deal with it. And Bunce, you know, very good on the outer ring as well, very efficient, which should see him through that, I think. And then, yeah, it's a dream tie for him. I wonder, Michael Smith, mentality-wise, Michael is definitely someone who, as you know, he's been written off before, you know, when he couldn't get over the line in majors. And he's clearly somebody, you know, there's some players I look at and I think you don't really care about the noise around you. You just get on with it. Michael is not one of those. I think he's very
right, yeah.
He's very aware of people talking about his form, writing him off, whatever. I have no doubt that he's been very motivated to get on the practice board and try and, you know, prove people wrong. So I'm not worried about his preparation. You know, I know he's talked about playing with Nathan Aspinall in the build-up and stuff. I think that'd be really good for him. However, you can't just turn form on and off like a tap unless you're Peter Wright. And Michael is a rhythm player. He is a pace player, and he relies on things to be flowing well. And if these new darts aren't working for him, I genuinely think, and I know he's contractually obliged to do otherwise, but I genuinely think there would have been a case for having a word and maybe going back to the old darts for if he was really bothered about defending this, you know, if it meant a lot to him. I do get the feeling with Michael that maybe that one world title, I'm not saying it was enough for him, but I think it justified. He felt like he's achieved.
He said, didn't he, that he completed darts, and you just feel like, what are you, 32, 33? Is that
well, this is it. And the talent he's got. I mean, Michael van Gerwen is, you know, he's appalled that he hasn't won 5 or 6 by now, isn't he? You know, and there's no signs of him settling for it. Every year he's full throttle for this title. Now, I'm not criticizing Michael. I think it's fantastic that he can, you know, be so happy with that achievement and enjoy it. I think enjoying big achievements in life is really important for sports players generally. But yeah, you'd have to have massive concerns about where his game is at. And in terms of a first round tie, he could have had it a lot easier. Even if Kevin Dirts comes through, we both expect Bunce to come through. Even if Dirts comes through, that would be a banana skin, because Dirts he's quite a good 180 hitter. He'll put Smith under pressure. I reckon Smith would rather play Dirts than Bunce, personally. Yeah. And if it is still Bunce, we could have a massive upset on the first night. And I don't think either of us would be that surprised. It's going to be an enjoyable one to watch that.
And just moving on to the second quarter, I mean, this is the most stacked quarter, isn't it? I mean, look, you got Peter Wright, you've got James Wade, who's found a bit of form and who can beat anyone. I mean, he's not been playing well, but the thing is, James Wade can always drop a clanger, but he wins with those clangers, and that is the difference. So he's in there as well. And then you've got Garen Price and Gary Anderson. I mean, that is absolutely stacked. Anderson's been playing the best darts for maybe 3 years. He wants to play darts. That is the difference. He's looking forward to tournaments. He's on the practice board. He wants to cheese people off in his own words. That's what he's been saying. And then you've got Garen Price, who we know what Garen Price can do and we know what he can win. But I'm a big believer in the top 16 players. I don't think there's a huge amount of difference in ability. It's what's going on up here mentally. And you have to have a positive, healthy mindset. Now, everything that I've been hearing from Garen Price is not good. It's been saying, if they moved it from Ali Pali to Wolverhampton, I'd win it. Or, the crowd get on my back. He said recently, I don't like set play. There's a lot of negativity, a lot of negativity going around Garen Price at the moment with the World Championship. And I don't think that's going to help him. And I think, we saw what Gary Anderson did to him and the Grand Slam. To be fair, Price played well. Anderson just played better. He was unbelievable. But I expect Anderson to come through this quarter. I think Peter Wright, yes, he can turn it on, but I just think Anderson, when he's not playing well, he plays well here. I think in the current form, he's going to take something special to beat him. And I just think Anderson's got that mindset at the moment and that confidence where in his mind he's thinking, you better play well, son, or you ain't beating me.
I totally agree. I mean, I'm not disrespecting the 8 non-seeded players here at the bottom of the second quarter, but I personally, and I include Brendan Dullan and Dirk van Dijvenbode in this. We should just mention Dirk van Dijvenbode's injury, obviously well documented. If he wasn't injured, he would be a real threat in this quarter. But he is quite badly injured at the moment, so I can't really make a case for him. So I'm looking at the bottom 12 players in that second quarter, and I just can't see anything but Garen Price versus Gary Anderson. I don't really see who trips either of them up before that.
You think Littler's got a chance?
Fourth round game, yes. But obviously he'll play. He'll play Peter Wright, won't he, or James Wade? I think he could be waiting for the winner of Price Anderson potentially. Actually, think he may come up. I see Littler getting to maybe the third round, and then I think Wade may just have a little bit too much experience for him over the long format. But that's an entertaining one in itself, isn't it? In that bottom of the bottom quarter, I can only really see an Anderson Price fourth round game, and I totally agree with you. In terms of ability, there's not much to separate them. Pace of play suits both of them, I think, and you can make a case for it going either way in terms of form. But what I can't make a case for is that we know that the crowd are going to play a massive part in it. We know that it's going to be really pro Anderson. We know it's going to be really anti-Price. And I feel it is just scripted for Anderson to win that game, Price to really bemoan the crowd afterwards and say that they've cost him the title and stuff. And I mean, last year, let's not forget Price, after he went out to Clemens and had the ear defenders on and stuff, he was quick on social media saying that he probably wouldn't play Ali Pali ever again.
Yeah, he blew up, didn't he?
He did. And do you know what? Some people be watching this and they really won't like Garen Price. I think he's a really genuine, nice bloke, a family man to his daughters, and and he just wants to provide. But unfortunately, his behaviour from earlier in his career has followed him, hasn't it? What happened with Gary Anderson in that Grand Slam.
Well,
and I know there's a lot of water under the bridge since then, but I mean, that has set the tone for his career, really, with antagonizing the crowds, encouraging it on. And I think if you have offered, it reminds me a little bit of a Paul Nicholson situation, actually, where I think if you offered him the chance now to start again with the crowds and say, I don't want to be this bad guy that everyone hates, I think he would never admit this, but I think he would take that, because the crowds have come to play a big role in his career, and the mental block is definitely there. And I don't really see, if Anderson turns up and plays like he does, I don't see how Price beats Anderson and the crowd. He'd have to beat both of them, wouldn't he? So that's why I'm getting Gary Anderson getting to a quarter final. Who he would play from the top of that quarter is very interesting. We've already talked about Peter Wright being unpredictable. James Wade, and you're right, I think Luke Littler has a fantastic opportunity here. A lot of hype and pressure around him, with good reason, as he showed at the World Youth Championship. And he's got the ability to take on anyone. However, I always try and temper expectations of young players at their first World Championship, because there will come a point where you're going to be up against a really experienced top 8, top 10 player over a long format who's been there and done it all before. And I think that Littler, he may well beat an injured Christian Kist. He may well beat Andrew Gilding. But I do think when he comes up against Wade over extended set format, that is a different kettle of fish altogether. And that may be where his run ends. If he does, surpass that, it doesn't get any easier for him, does it? Because then he'd potentially have to play Peter Wright, and then he'd potentially have to play Gary Anderson or Gerwyn Price. So, I mean, like, these people that are getting a bit carried away with, Littler to win the quarter, Littler to win the world champion. Let's just give him a chance. Let's just enjoy him. He's 16. He's going to be around for decades. He's clearly got ability, but for goodness sake, he's not played a senior match on the tour yet. Let's just enjoy him,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We talked about how stacked that quarter is. We got to the other half of the draw, and I think, relatively speaking, because everything is, you've got to put in context, it's not a stacked half of the draw. I mean, I don't think either quarter. I think you look at, obviously, Michael Van Gerwen in the third quarter and newcomers in the fourth quarter. I mean, you can't see how those aren't on a collision course for the semi-finals. I mean, Michael Van Gerwen, you look at that quarter, I mean, you got Dimitri Van den Berg, who's a seed who's not been in great form. Stephen Bunting, we're going to talk about our dark horses next. I'm sure he's going to be in our list. He could pose a challenge, but I think over that format against Michael Van Gerwen, you expect Van Gerwen to come through that. You got Danny Noppert, who he goes under the radar, Danny Noppert, but he's a number 7 seed, and then Damon Heta again. We know what he can do. He's starting to do it a bit on TV, but I'm not looking at that draw. I'm thinking Michael Van Gerwen's got his hand full. And we mentioned it at the top of this preview. Van Gerwen always plays well in the World Championship. I mean, he had a ridiculous streak, didn't he, of 20, 25 or whatever it was, of ton plus average every single game at the World Championship, which is crazy. Do you see anyone stopping Michael Van Gerwen? I mean, Josh Rock again is another tough player, but I think maybe there's a little bit too much hype about him at the moment. He's 22 years old. He's got more than enough ability to come into his own, but I just can't see how Van Gerwen stumbles in this quarter.
The reason I like this quarter for Van Gerwen is because the two players that I think could beat him over a set format at the moment are probably Damon Heta and Josh Rock. And by the time he plays them, it's going to be best of 9. And I just think that's too long for someone against Van Gerwen to turn him over. To win 5 sets out of 9 against him, it's going to be extremely tough. The chance to get Van Gerwen is kind of early on, like Barney did in the third round of them years ago and stuff. Because as he gets deeper and deeper into the draw, like you say, last year, ton plus average in every game until the final. So how do you compete with that? He made players like, you're coming into it, you're thinking, Chris Dobie could give him trouble, or Dimitri could give him trouble. He just brushed them aside like they were nothing, So it's really tough to make a case for him. I mean, look at his start. No disrespect to these players here, but Keane Barry, had a tough. I mean, he actually got knocked out by Grant Sampson last year. You'd struggle to see Keane Barry dumping MVG out. Then he's playing one of Kim Huybrechts, Richard Veenstra, or Ben Robb, all good players in their own right. But again, are they going to beat MVG? Can't see it. And then the set format starts to open up, extend, and it gets harder and harder as the longer format goes. And you're thinking, we kind of need a top 4 player here to give him a serious threat. Stephen Bunting, it killed me. He blew it a little bit at the Players' Championship finals, didn't he? I think so. I'm not saying he blew it because Van Gerwen went, I think Van Gerwen went 12-13, 12-11 to win it. I mean, Van Gerwen won it, but Bunting's darts definitely dropped off a bit in those last 4 legs.
Yeah, I mean, when you're 9-6 up in a race to 10 and don't get a match dart, no matter what
you've thrown for it twice, haven't you? And you've not had a match start, which is credit to Michael, but also Stephen would have been disappointed with that, I think. And it was very telling for me afterwards in his interview when Michael said, "I've played Stephen many times on the stage, and I know if you can apply a little bit of pressure to him at the right time, he does sometimes crumble." And that's, it's horrible to say, but
he knows what to say, doesn't he, Michael?
It's probably true. Stephen's too nice at times, and I think he could do with a bit of a more ruthless, nasty streak at times, rather than just accepting the situation. You want him to get frustrated, but it's not in his nature, is it? He's such a softly spoken, nice bloke.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Bunting is the obvious one in that little section that you're thinking. I mean, Dimitri Vandenberg, he's probably in better form than you would think if you actually look at his recent numbers. But again, he played Michael van Gerwen when he was in good form last year and he got whitewashed. Yeah. So yeah, I don't really see any major troubles to Van Gerwen. I think his quarterfinal game will be against the winner of Heta and Rock. I really like Danny Noppert, but I think Danny Noppert is maybe a player who, when you expect him to beat his opponent, he does. But when he comes up against a top quality operator, he sometimes just, narrowly loses. That's generally what happens with Danny. And that consistency's got him into the top 8, so it's not to be sniffed at. But, you always think there's going to be someone that eventually proves just a little bit too good for him. And I think, Rock is going to be the name that people are drawn to, isn't it? He's shown the recent form. He's box office. He's got the scoring. But I wouldn't be surprised if Damon Heta took care of him either. So I think either of them two to come through, play Van Gerwen in the quarter would be my feeling. And I think by that point, the long format will suit MVG.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we look at the fourth quarter. Again, I don't think it's particularly stacked. I think it really favours Luke Humphries. I think he's got a really nice opening tie against either Lee Evans or Sandro Eriksson. I mean, there are players who could trip him up, but if I'm looking at the players that catch my eye in this, I'm looking at Jan van Veen, who has fallen out of form recently, had a poor Grand Slam, lost the World Youth Final. To be fair, Luke Lately averaged 102. But he's not been great recently. Gabriel Clemens, again, good run at the Players' Championship finals, but not had a great year. Dave Chisnell generally does well at Alexandra Palace. Won 5 titles this year, but horrific on the television. Had a bit of a run at the Players' Championship finals, but lost disappointingly to Luke Woodhouse. Then you've got Searle, who, again, good player, but Luke just seems to have his number. Joe Cullen probably would have wanted a little bit better form, and he's admitted that his mindset is not in the best place. He didn't go to the Grand Slam qualifier because of that. And then you've got Nathan Aspinall, world match play champion. But again, since that, he's really struggled with his own form. Him and Michael Smith have been practicing just to try and help each other out. It just seems like it's Luke Humphries' quarter to lose.
Does, yeah, a lot of question marks over the players in this quarter, aren't there? And that all suits Humphries, who has absolutely no question marks over him. Certainly not in these early rounds anyway. Like you say, the dream opening tie. And then beyond that, like if you could pick a seed to be paired with, Callum Ridds, he's having a really tough time of things at the moment. So he'd be happy with that one as well. I think Luke recently gave him a bit of a pasting as well in their last meeting. So, I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually Pietreczko that comes through against Ridds. And then with Pietreczko's shown his weaknesses with the crowd against him.
I can't wait for that match. When I saw Bakura and Ricardo, I was like, it'd be interesting to see what he's learned from that, actually, because
he's asked for that though, hasn't he? With the way he carried on. I mean, I won't dive into it too much, but it's no good complaining when you have the crowd against you, because his success in Germany, that's exactly how his opponents were feeling, isn't it? Yeah. So come on, I mean, you got to expect to give and take it. He's made himself a bit of a target now, so we'll see how he deals with that. And like you said, just all the seeds aside from Luke, just question marks over them. All capable on the day. Joe Cullen might be a danger that we're overlooking. Joe, I mean, he's had some great performances at Ali Pali, but like you said, just a lot of doubts over him, and he's said himself he's not quite all there at the moment. Ryan Searle, I agree. Luke Humphries seems to have his number. Very capable player. And then the one that I keep looking back at is Aspinall. You just don't want to write him off, do you? I mean, he's got a good Alexandra Palace record. He's won the match play this year. I think sets suit him because he has a bit of time to go in and regroup and get a bit of fire in his belly, which, Nathan plays with fire in his belly, doesn't he? He needs that. He sometimes needs to go behind and get angry to produce his best starts. So, but he's another one where the form, you're just wondering if he's quite at his peak or not. If he is, I'd say he's the biggest danger to Humphries in this quarter, to be fair. And Chizzy, God, if we ever got to see Chizzy win a major, I mean, his TV record this year has been absolutely abysmal. So I'd love to see it, but yeah, I can't predict it with any confidence now. It looks like a dream draw for Humphries.
I mean, so we've looked at the quarter now. We've looked at everybody, and we've talked about through. And who are your dark horses for the tournament? I mean, you mentioned Dave Chisnall there. I mean, Dave Chisnall has had a bad year on the TV, but on the floor, he's on the Euro Tour as well. He's won 5 titles. He's beaten Luke Humphries in a couple of those finals as well. And Dave Chisnall plays well here at Alexandra Palace. If he can find the performance against Luke Humphries, then we know what he can do, and he's more than capable. We've seen it against Van Gogh a few years ago. He's a danger, but Dave Chisnall might put in that performance maybe 1 in 6 times on this big against Luke Humphries, the performance that he needs, but he could do. That's not, maybe I've done him a disservice then. Maybe 1 in 4 times. He's well capable of doing that. And, a bit like Stephen Bunting in that top quarter, like you said, we expect Michael Van Gerwen to come through. If Van Gerwen falls from that quarter, that half essentially is wide open with the exception of Luke Humphries. So even, Stephen Bunting, Damon Hetter's in that as well, Josh Rocker's in that. If Van Gerwen can fall early on, and anything can happen, we've seen that. We saw it with Rene Adams a few years ago, nearly knocked him out very early on. Those could go on a run. So you always seem to get one quarter that opens up. You always seem to get someone who goes deep. I feel like there's opportunities for those. I'm not saying they are going to go on a deep run, but I think all it takes is for one match to change it. And, they really could blast their way deep into this tournament. So I'm going to say my dark horses are, if they could just put in the performance that they need at the right time, Dave Chisnall, Damon Hester, Stephen Bunting. I think that half of the draw compared to the first half is just wide open.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. Yeah, I mean, look, there's always going to be one result, maybe 2 results in terms of the top 8 that we just don't see coming, and it does blow a part of the draw open, and that's why you have players getting runs to the quarterfinals that you would never have anticipated beforehand. It can open up very quickly. I'm looking in that first quarter for my dark horse. Obviously, Michael Smith, top seed in there. Everyone has naturally kind of leaned to Rob Cross as the alternative in that first quarter because
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, but it's the right thing to do, obviously, because he's in the best form. He's made a few finals, and yeah, he's the most dependable. But I actually think there's a really key match here in this quarter that's going to come up, and I think it's going to be Ross Smith versus Chris Dobey. I think they're going to meet. I think they'll both get through their second round games. And then whoever wins that can really, really fancy their chances of getting to, quarterfinals, semi-finals, because they're both, there's positives for both. I mean, Ross Smith probably not had the 2023 he would have liked, but if you look at his stats in the last 3 months, he's finding his best form at the right time.
He's talked about that a lot himself.
And he is a 180 machine. I mean, he could, if Ross Smith gets to the semi-finals or the finals, he'll have probably hit more 180s than anyone else. It's just the way he is. He's gathered his experience at the Ali Pali stage over the years, lost a cracker with Dirk van Dijvenbode last year, very unlucky to do so, maybe match of the tournament, that, to be fair. And he'll be really quietly confident, not a lot of talk around him, which is positive. However, I do equally rate the chances of Chris Dobey because I think he's had a brilliant year on the quiet. Couple of disappointing results recently, which he would admit himself, but he's always often produced his best at Ali Pali. Even before he had his breakthrough, we saw flashes of his talent at Alexandra Palace. So he obviously enjoys it. He doesn't get too high or too low in his games. He's got very good temperament, which I think is important for set play. And like Ross Smith, very big scorer when he's playing well, very big 180 hitter. So I think whoever comes through that game, even if Michael Smith was still in the tournament, they would fancy the chances of knocking out Michael Smith in round 4. And then if they got into a shoot down with Rob Cross in the quarterfinal, I think either of those players would have a really good chance. So that is the bit I'm looking at. I think whoever wins between Ross Smith and Chris Dobey in round 3 could quite easily go to the final 4.
Yeah, you make a good point. Chris Dobey, obviously breakout year, Masters champion, full Premier League debut. And Ross Smith, he spoke about it himself. You know, he's a big person who looks at stats. You know, some people don't. He does. He looks at that Oracle a lot, and he knows that he's playing better when you look at the stats than he is in previous years. So he is a big danger, and you know, paired with Michael Smith in the same quarter, he's Michael Smith will be feeling it. But all that being said, I want you to give your winner and your finalists. Who do you think meets in the 2024 World Final?
God, this could be heart ruling head a little bit. I think
I'm in the same boat with mine.
I think the final might be Michael van Gerwen versus Gary Anderson. Bit of a throwback. Yeah, I really do fancy Gary's chances. Like we say, with the Gerwin Price matchup and stuff, you know, I think that the crowd will help him maybe through that one. And the further he goes into the tournament, he's a master of this kind of format, isn't he? Look at as well as his 2 tournament wins, the one that for me that stands out the most, Gary Anderson, when he got to the final against Gerwin Price, he sleptwalked to the final. You know, no one really talked about him, and then suddenly he's in the World Championship final. I don't think
did that all year, didn't I?
I don't think even he could believe it. And
Premier League last 4 and the World Match Play final in the same year, and I don't think he played well in any of them.
No, and he's playing way better than he was when he got to the final then, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And like we say, the draw could have been worse, I think. So yeah, I'm gonna stick Gary in there, and I think we get that MVG Humphreys showdown in the semi, and I think maybe Michael just edges it. And then predicting the final, my heart would be with Gary, but my head would be with Michael, I think. So I'm gonna go for Michael van Gerwen to finally get that 4th title.
Yeah, I'm going to be a bit boring, to be honest. I did a bit for someone else the other day, and they asked me my final, and I said it was Anderson versus Van Gerwen.
Well, maybe it's, you know, we're saying it's boring, but if we both think
the match certainly won't be, will it?
That's it.
I mean, it's, you know, on one side of the draw, you've got someone who, number one, is one of the greatest players ever anyway, who's just number 2, finding his form, unbelievable form. But I think the key thing for me, he wants to play darts. He's putting in the hours, you know. He's going to be upset if he loses. And that's the thing. He's going to be upset if he loses. And to be fair, you know, it's quite important here, because one thing we haven't mentioned is the money that people are defending. He's defending 100,000. His ranking's not great anyway at the moment. So we're defending £100,000. You know, he's going to sort of need to make quite a run, which that can put his own pressure on. I know we've not really mentioned it, but £500,000 for Peter Wright. If he doesn't have a good World Championship, then he really could drop down the rankings. And then Michael van Gerwen, you know, he just always does well in this tournament. It's going to take a very special performance to beat him. And like you said, I think just the experience over this format is going to help him in the semi-final clash against Luke Humphreys if they do meet. I think the World Championship is just a different kettle of fish. Although one thing I will say is that I don't think Luke Humphreys is going to put as much pressure on himself. He's very realistic. He's well-spoken. He knows he's got hopefully 20, 25 years at this game. Whereas Michael van Gerwen, it seems a bit silly to say about a 3-time world champion. He'll be disappointed with that haul. You know, I mean, you can define Van Gerwen's career pre-2012 and post-25, post-20, a bit like Jesus in a way, I guess. And I think 3 world championships in that time between 2012 and now is not enough. I think, and I don't think he would have said it, but I think at the start of his career, when he started winning like he did, I think he would have been eyeing up at least 10. I think in his own mind, he'd have been thinking, I wouldn't be surprised if for a brief moment he was thinking, can I do 16?
Phil, yeah.
But
he never said it publicly, but
yeah.
I'm sure he was. And yeah, it is a disappointment. It seems ridiculous to say 3 world championships disappointing, but when you've had the dominance that he's had and the level of play, he should have at least 5 by now, shouldn't he? Really, and he knows that. And like we said about earlier in the video, Michael Smith, he seems to be quite happy with his 1. I definitely don't think MVG is.
No, I think Van Gogh won't be happy until he's at least 6. I think he wants to beat Raymond van Barneveld. I mean, I call Barney a one-time world champion, but that's a completely different argument for a completely different day. But if he could surpass Barney and surpass Eric Bristow and put him in his own category, I mean, at the moment he's in company with John Part. Do you know what? John Part jokes himself. I don't know how I won 3 world championships, but I mean, to be fair with John, I mean, that Phil Taylor final, digressed a bit. That Phil Taylor final was unbelievable. But yeah, I think even in the current climate, I think unless Van Gerwen drops off more, because I mean, he has dropped off from his peak, but his peak was unmatched by anyone. You can't sustain that. I think Van Gerwen still has it in him to rattle off 2 or 3 on the spin at some point in his career. I mean, you look at someone like Geraint Price, who he is an elite player. It's been over 2 years since he's won a ranking major. I mean, that shows you how good Van Gerwen is. People are saying he's not the player that he was. He still wins more than anybody else. I mean, Luke Humphries is trying to change that, but Michael Van Gerwen still wins more on the TV than anyone else. So, yeah, I agree with you. Anderson Van Gerwen final. I do think Van Gerwen comes through it. I just think, well, I said that when he played Peter Wright and Michael Smith in the final, but I just think Van Gerwen, year on year, as he keeps losing, he's going to get hungrier and hungrier. I think Anderson, as much as we would want that world title, part of it in his mind will be thinking, well, I've got another 100 Craven, what are we defending? And I think it'll be a high quality final. But I just think over that format as well, Anderson might get a little bit more fatigued.
I was going to say, the only thing I haven't mentioned about that, is the stamina kind of thing. I think we saw Gary start to run out of steam a little bit, even at the Grand Slam. And yeah, he's got more rest time in between this. But by the, if he does reach the final, they've been playing for nigh on 3 weeks, and he'll have done a lot of media, and he'll have done a lot of tracking back and forth. And will he be as fresh as Michael as well over such a long format? Who knows? But I think we'd all be happy if we got an Anderson Van Gerwen final, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Well, that concludes our World Championship preview. It starts next week. We will be there every single day of the World Championship, bringing you the latest prediction, the latest post-match reaction, I should say, from everybody. So do stay tuned to this channel for more. And also, do not forget our huge giveaway. It's a mega giveaway, 16 prizes. Head over to our Twitter at Darts Now. Check our pin tweet. It's free to enter. You don't have to do anything apart from click like and click retweet. Make sure that you are following the channel as well. We've spent nearly $1,000 on this giveaway. There's so many great prizes. And if you want a more in-depth betting preview, do check our affiliate channel, link in the description, Odds Now. You'll see Matt breaking down the different quarters, the different markets in depth to try and find you a few quid to spend over the Christmas period.